how you like it, yeah.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the We Don't Know TV podcast. My name is Leaf. I am your host. This is the podcast where we watch the first episode of a show and then we talk about it. So because we're still in October and because Halloween is still around the corner, we are sticking with scary shows. Today, we're talking about two-sentence horror stories. The premise is that this anthology series of terror features diverse characters facing primal fears and spine-chilling situations that stretch past daily routines. Too many words. If it were me, I would put like 2 sentences of horror. No. 2 sentences of fear, 20 minutes of horror. You know what I mean? Like, after the strike, put me in the writer's booth. But anyways, so, I saw this on Netflix. I put it on the first episode. I was like, all right, we're going to hop right into it. As soon as it starts, it goes CW. And I'm like, oh, no, we're in for a mediocre time. Let's get into the episode. If it's your first time here, I go beat by beat through the episode. That way we don't miss anything. So I guess it starts off with the actual sentence that the episode is based off of. And the first sentence is, she was stiff and cold in my arms. All right. So it starts with this lady, and she went on a date with this guy. It turns out that she is a mom and she has a baby. And then it pops up, the title of the episode is Gentleman. She's nervous. She's doing like a monologue. I don't know why. But she's doing a monologue. She's like, it was nervous and the date wasn't going very well. They're doing the generic thing, like, what do you do for work? Yada, yada, yada. And it was just not working. She's like, yo, I was about to dip for real. And then this guy's, I think it's sister-in-law, they didn't really say, but comes in with the baby. And he's like, oh, do you mind if I hold like my nephew or whatever real quick? Just kind of say hi. So he does that. And she's like, oh, you know what? He looks like like a family man. She's like, oh, it reminds me of my baby. And then he's like, oh, I didn't know you had a child. Like, you didn't say that in your profile. And she's like, yeah, guys don't really like that. And she was worried that he wouldn't, be into it. But he's like, no, I actually want to be like a great father. And they start chatting it up and things turn right around, right? So it goes back to her house. She texts him because she's all giddy after the date. She's like, can't wait to see you. He's like, I can't wait to see you again. Everything's going awesome. We go to him, and then at first it seems like, uh-oh, is he married? No, he's with another woman, and she also has a baby. Right? And he's like, oh, you gave your baby a bottle instead of breastfeeding? And she's like, explaining her side of the story of like, yeah, I just thought it was better for me and for him, or the baby, to, do the bottle instead for X, Y, and Z. And, he's not having that. He's like, no, it's actually better if you do breastfeed. He's like, you don't breastfeed, you're a bad mom. And it's at this point where I know having a stranger in your house when you have a child is scary. And I understand that this wanted to be scary. But the line of, you don't breastfeed, you're a bad mom, just made this whole situation funny. That even when he was like going to kill her, I was like, I know this should be scary. I get it. But like him being like, because you don't breastfeed, I'm going to kill you. It's just kind of like so weird that it's funny. So that part did not work for me. Yeah. And so I went into that. I'm already starting off with like, this is humorous more than it is scary. Like, I understand it's supposed to be scary, but off the bat, we're not working. This isn't working. But then he goes in and he picks up the baby and he like cuddles it a little bit. It's a little weird. And then he calls the police and he's like, oh, I found a baby like all by itself. And then they don't really explain, like, does he hide the body or anything? Like, did the police not investigate? No time for that. We go back to the original main character. She's at work. Her boss, asks her about the date. She tells her like, oh, it didn't go well at first, but then everything turned around. The boss is like, oh, we'd love to like meet your baby. You should bring her in. And she's like, oh, like, I don't know. Like, I have to be like really comfortable with people before I bring the baby in. So maybe someday, but like not right now. And the boss is like, all right, cool. Like, whenever. And then we go back to the two of them talking. Yeah, so they go on another date, and she likes to talk about her baby. She's like, oh, I hope like this guy can be in my future. And he asked like, hey, what happened to the dad? And she was like, oh, well, my ex didn't really want to have kids, and then I kept having miscarriages, and then at some point he just kind of, he's like, this isn't working like overall, and he just kind of dipped. And then she asked about him, like, hey, what's your family like? And he was like, oh, I never knew my father, and my mom wasn't really a good mom. She always brought random people around, and then one day she just up and left me, which made me like, I felt good at first, but then I got really angry. So, but he's like, I want to be a good father. I want to be a husband, all that good stuff. They hold hands. They go out on a little stroll. They're holding hands. She's cold. He's like, let me get you my jacket. And she's like, no, no, no. How about we do this instead? And she hugs him. Everything's going nice. They kiss. She's like, like she starts getting like cold feet. She's like, hey, maybe we can slow this down a little bit. You know, maybe eventually we can kind of go on a couple more dates. We meet at a hotel, you know, things go down, and then, you know, kind of go from there. And he flips out because he wants to go back to her house so he can murder her, obviously. But he like pulls her in, and he's like, you know, gripping her arm, and he's like, oh, you think I'm not good enough for you, stupid bitch? And then some guys are like, yo, you need help? And she's like, no, I'm good. And she kind of leaves and then goes home. Next day, she's getting crazy texts. He's like, answer me, blah, blah, blah. He's one of those crazy things where they like text you so fast. It's like, I couldn't even respond if you gave me the chance because you're responding to yourself almost immediately. And then she blocks him. I was like, all right, I'm glad this character is smart. And then, you know, she goes home and she's clearly frustrated over everything. Cuts to the next day. She gets coffee. She goes outside. He's there. He's like, give me a chance. She's like, fuck you. Goes back to her job. She sees that he sends a bunch of flowers. She takes her time to like individually like break them up, which I thought was weird. I was like, girl, you just throw them out. Like you're doing the most right now. He's supposed to be the crazy one. He somehow gets her email, and he starts emailing her like back to back again at a rate where it's like, bro, you know, you're not even giving me a chance to answer you. And then the boss is like, yo, we got a new client. I want you to come meet them, and then we'll see like what we can do for them. She goes, and it's homeboy. You know, he's talking about like, yeah, I want to like have more space. I want to have a family. And at this point, I'm like, girl, if you don't grab your boss and be like, yo, can I talk to you in private? And be like, yo, this man is stalking me. Like, please call the police or something. No, the show just moves on. And I'm like, okay, it's one of those things where it's like, if you just do like something logical, you know what I mean? Maybe things go differently. And it's not where it's like, oh, if they talk to each other, then there won't be a show. Like, they definitely could have built upon like him somehow getting around the fact that she's trying to get away from him. But nope, they just move on. She doesn't say anything. She goes to bed. The baby was crying. Yeah, she eventually goes to bed. He's laying next to her. It's like, oh, is this a dream? Is this real? And then it turns out it is real. You know, she wakes up. She freaks out. He grabs her by the mouth. He's like, yo, chill out. Like, everything's good. Like, don't worry about it. And then he, like, drags her over to, like, so they can go see the baby. And then they have, like, this weak-ass, like, moment where she grabs a portrait off the wall and, like, slams it into his head. But the way that it's shot and, like, performed, it's like he purposely... It's like, you know, she's like, here I come. It's not like so fast that it seems natural. It seems set up. And then he does a punch, but like the punch he does seems so weak that it's like, it doesn't have like the force behind it to really feel like she got knocked out, right? Just kind of like, almost like a boop. And then she like passed out. He then goes into pick up the baby, as he does, apparently. He goes and picks up the baby. Turns out the baby isn't real, which I called from the beginning. When she was holding the baby, I was like, I bet that baby's fake for some reason, because I love to ruin things for myself. But yeah, it turns out the baby is fake. She grabs scissors. She stabs him. She's like, oh my God, my baby. When he dropped the baby, the little plastic face came off. She puts the face back on. She starts fixing it. And he's like crawling away with scissors in his shoulder. And it's at this point that I was like, oh, I really want her to snap. Like, I want her to take those scissors out of him and just like, yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Just like prove that she's the crazy one. Like, you're in my house, not the other way around. But instead, I guess because it's a CW show, she just goes over and she kicks the scissors into his back. They don't show it. Not that they need to show it, but I felt like, oh, you had this moment to like really like flip things around and like have her truly be like the insane one. And it's just kind of like, oh, she's crazy. But I wasn't like, I wasn't shocked. I wasn't like, oh my god. It's kind of like, oh, she's the crazy one. Yeah, it shows her with all the baby. I guess she had like 3D printed like each step of the baby, which is crazy. And then there's like a sketch of like the perfect man, and it was like, okay, is she gonna like print out a man and like put it like a mannequin together and pretend to have a husband, or is she gonna look for a guy that looks like that? It wasn't really clear, but when it came to the end of the episode, instead of feeling like, oh, this lady's like insane, I actually felt really bad for her, because it's like, well, with the little bit of information we get from the episode, you know that she's had a bunch of miscarriages, so she probably snapped at some point, got this baby for therapy or something, and then was kind of like, in her head, she's like, the baby's real. You know what I mean? So I ended the episode being like, oh, this is kind of sad, but I know that the show wanted me to feel like, oh, look, she's out of her mind. Like, ooh. And it just didn't work for me at all. Again, I think the show probably needed like a more mature rating, and like just really need to dip down into not gore per se, but like something more intense to really like hone in that like she's the thing that we should have been paying attention to and not him. But instead, yeah, again with him in the beginning being like being like, you don't breastfeed, you're a bad mom. And then just her like kind of like kicking the scissors into his shoulder and being like, oh, that's it, like I'm a good mom, look at my fake baby. It just didn't like, this didn't work for me at all. So we're gonna get into my rating scale. If it's your first time here, I have a 3-point rating scale. It is 1 and done. Give it a chance, and I am in. For this one, I'm gonna give it a 1 and done, even though that this is an anthology series where each episode is different. Just like based off this first one and the fact that it is a CW show, I imagine that they're not really gonna hone in on the things that are gonna make an episode like really scary or intense, or you know, something to be like, yo, you gotta watch this show. Like just some other shows that I've seen before where, you know, it really grabs my attention, and even if it isn't scary, it's like you know, it makes me want to be like, yo, you should check this out, because it might scare you. Like it didn't scare me, but like I guess the best comparison I can give is like right now there's this Netflix show called the Fall of the House of Usher, and like the scary parts don't scare me, but they're terrifying enough that I can feel the fear that you would have if you were on the other end. Whereas this one, I didn't feel that scared, because I was like, if you just kind of did X, Y, and Z, I think you'd have a good time. And then like, as for her like getting away from him, like calling the police, or like being like, yeah, well, my boss, like we gotta watch out for this guy, or you know, really having her just kind of like, even if she like tied him up, right, and he woke up and she's like, yeah, you're gonna be a good father, like you're gonna live with me now, and then you know, something like bonkers to have her really be crazy. It just didn't, this episode didn't work for me. That's the shortest way to say it. So yeah, I'm gonna give this one a 1 and done. I won't be coming back to it. Like I said, I will be uploading for, well, this entire week. So there's another episode tomorrow, and then I'll be back to schedule where the following episode will be on Tuesday. Tomorrow I'll be watching Supernatural, so look out for that. If you want to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter or X at Little Leafers. And yeah, hopefully you guys will hear me tomorrow, and then hear me again on Tuesday. All right, have a good day. Peace.